You tell Bo if he wants his town, come see me.
Hello, and welcome to Popcorn and Prosecco, a movie review podcast where we talk about movies. As you can tell, I am not Perry Nemiroff. This is Kristy Puchko. Perry's out this week, but I'm here with Angie Hahn, and we're going to review Magnificent Seven.
Hi.
But first, we're going to start off with Angie giving us some of the highlights of TIFF, because as we told you last week, she was away doing the TIFF stuff. So tell us all about it, Angie.
Yeah, so I was out last week because I was busy running around watching a bunch of movies for TIFF, and I have come back with opinions to share on some of the stuff that I watched. You know, I can't cover everything that I saw, obviously, but I just want to run through some of the highlights. One film that really emerged as a big favorite of a lot of the critics that I've talked to was Moonlight by Barry Jenkins. I think it's a film that, people had seen the trailer and thought it looked good and stuff, but I don't think it was really hugely on anyone's radar until a few weeks ago because, Barry Jenkins is, he's only directed, I think, one other feature film. He's an indie director. None of the actors in it are that huge. It's not one of those movies where, from 2 years ago, we've been feverishly anticipating it, but it really it's been a favorite of so many of the critics that I've talked to. It's really tender and well acted, and just it's a movie that has really just kind of stuck with me. It's basically a coming of age story about a young gay black kid growing up in Miami. And it's told in 3 parts. You see him as a child, and then as an adolescent, and then as an adult. And it's really unlike anything that I've seen. Not to say that it's gonna blow your mind. It's not like a mind twister kind of thing. It's just really unique and lovely, and something that I've been thinking about continually since I saw it. So I think that's definitely one to keep on your radar. Another film that I really, really loved was Arrival by, I'm gonna screw up his name, but Denis Villeneuve. Did I say it right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Sure, I'm going to avoid saying that again. I'm sorry, Mr. Director, sir. But that one stars Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner, and I think I described it to Kristy before the show started as what I think Interstellar was kind of trying to do, in that it's a sci-fi movie that's trying to be really cerebral but also really emotional. And while I don't think Interstellar was completely successful, I think Arrival works really well. Part of it has to do with the fact that the sci-fi part of it is not something we see that often. She plays a linguistics professor, so it's really about aliens have arrived on Earth, and instead of Independence Day where we're let's blast those motherfuckers into another universe, Forrest Whitaker, who's represents the military, calls upon Amy Adams to try and communicate with the aliens. So it's got a lot to do. So it's about science, but it's more about language rather than space exploration, which is really interesting. And again, Amy Adams, it really rests on her though, and she does such a phenomenal job. She's been nominated for Oscar, I think 5 times. I wouldn't be surprised if she got another one, and I'd be thrilled. She also had a really good showing with Nocturnal Animals, the Tom Ford movie, although hers is more of a supporting role. That's a little bit more Jake Gyllenhaal's movie than hers. Another film that I did not see at TIFF but did play at TIFF was Manchester by the Sea, starring Casey Affleck. And while we're talking awards, which I think is kind of unavoidable when you're talking about fall film festival stuff, I think that he's another one. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a nomination, but I also really hope that Lucas Hedges does. It's a story about Casey Affleck who having to take care of his teenage nephew, played by Lucas Hedges, after his brother dies. Lucas Hedges, I think Casey Affleck is getting all the attention because he's Casey Affleck, but the younger actor does a really good job of playing against him in a role that I think is a little bit more, it's not as showy, it's not as obviously the big, Oscar baity performance, but he does a really fine job. I've been excited about this kid since he was in Zero Theorem, and I am really looking forward to where he goes next. And then I finally wanted to just wrap up with 2 films that I just really enjoyed the shit out of. And one of them is Free Fire by Ben Wheatley, and the other one is The Handmaiden by Chan-wook Park. So I'm not one of those people who's super, super into Ben Wheatley all the time. He's kind of, sometimes I like him, sometimes I don't, but Free Fire I thought was fantastic fun. It's just a movie where, every kind of gangster movie or crime movie has to end with that big third act shootout. Well, the third act shootout is almost the entire movie, and it's just a bunch of, stars that you like Cillian Murphy, Brie Larson, Charlton Copley is actually surprisingly good in this. I don't know.
I know Armie Hammer's in it.
Armie Hammer's in it. Like, it's a bunch of actors, and they just put them in this giant room, and an arms deal is going off, and then something goes wrong, and they all start shooting each other, and it is so ridiculous, and it's so funny, and I laughed so much. I was delighted by this movie. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see it again. And then another movie that was a favorite of mine that I actually did not see at TIFF, saw a little bit before, was The Handmaiden. And that's another movie that, I guess, kind of similar to Free Fire. I did not expect it to make me laugh, but I did. I'm not saying it's a comedy, but it's more fun and has a better sense of humor than you would expect from the trailers, which are all like, dark and twisted and sexy, like 50 Shades of Grey if it was actually for grown-ups. Like, they're selling it that way. But it's actually,
oh my god,
like,
please let that be your pull quote. I mean, you're not wrong, but that's hilarious. 50 Shades of Grey if it were actually for grown-ups.
Anyway, so that was my TIFF experience. Those are some of the films to watch out for. There are dozens more that I can't even get into right now, but yeah, hope you have a chance to check
And your reviews are on
some of those
Slash
out.
Film, right?
Yep.
All right, great. Go look for them there because Angie's a hell of a writer. So we're going to move on now to The Magnificent Seven,
Which
also
did
played
play
at TIFF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see it there, though.
But now it's hitting theaters, and here is the plot line. 7 gunmen in the Old West gradually come together to help a poor village against savage thieves. Yeah, that's accurate enough. I mean, it's the plot of The Magnificent Seven or Seven Samurai. It's same plot, different particulars. I
Which
reread
is already,
the
like, not that complicated of a plot, so.
No, not at all. It's basically like, here are 7 guys who are kind of bad guys. They're like, hired guns or bounty hunters or gamblers or whatever. They're a bunch of degenerates. But they have the opportunity to save this small town and fight off this robber baron played by Peter Sarsgaard, and they decide to kind of like take the opportunity to be good guys. And I loved this. I thought it was so fun. I've seen the original. I've seen both of the originals, actually. I've seen the original Magnificent Seven, and I've seen Seven Samurai. But I thought what Anton Fuqua did here is he took the tropes of the West, which is that you kind of know these characters are like, here's Denzel Washington as the man in black. Here's Chris Pratt as the goofy drunk. Here's, they introduce these characters that you kind of vaguely know. And they have such star power because they're played by a bunch of actors you like, that you kind of like get the characters really quick, and then we're off and running. And it just races kind of right to the action. And I had a lot of fun with that.
I did not like it, but I thought it was okay. Like, to me, it felt a lot like Suicide Squad. And suffered from, like, not only is the premise similar, but it suffered from a lot of the same problems, and, also enjoyed a lot of the same strengths. So, one of the big problems is that both of those movies are kind of structured where, like, you have, like, the first act, which is, like, introducing the gang, getting them all together, and then you just dive into the third act. There's no second act, there's not, to my taste at least, not enough character development, and I think that, as you said, in both movies, it really is helped by the fact that they're, A, playing archetypes, and B, played by, like, hugely charismatic movie stars, and I think that goes a long way toward making you like them, but I don't think the movie actually helps them that much in that regard, because they're so, like, they're relying on that so much that they don't actually take enough time to develop these characters, which is disappointing, because, like, some of the Magnificent Seven characters are really intriguing. Like, Denzel Washington as a cowboy, done. That's amazing. Like, Chris Pratt is being Chris Pratt, but he's really, really fun. And Anton Fuqua, God bless that man. He understands exactly how hot Chris Pratt is and how to show off his assets. Thank you, Anton Fuqua. You were the best.
This movie definitely likes to leer at Chris Pratt.
There's a lot of, like, slow pan up, like, objectifying shots. Like, I was like, yes. Oh, and one of the things I learned is that when the camera focuses a lot on the guns in their holsters, a lot of times they're just staring at people's butts and their crotches, and it's a cast of, like, gorgeous movie stars. So I was like, yeah, I'm into this. But, like, for me, the biggest example of a character that I felt like I liked but was really underserviced by the narrative, actually 2 characters, is Ethan Hawke and Byung-hun Lee play, like, two buddies, and they're like, and, like, the movie.
Please say their names, because their names are amazing.
Okay. Ethan Hawke plays Goodnight Robichaux.
Which sounds like a horrible sex move. Like, it sounds like something that should be on Urban Dictionary.
So does the other
one.
Like,
I gave her the good old Goodnight Robichaux.
The other one kind of does, too.
Yeah,
his name
Billy
is
Rocks.
Billy Rocks. Yeah, so those are their names. They all have amazing names like this. The villain played by Peter Sarsgaard is Bartholomew Vogue. Chris Pratt is like something Faraday. I don't remember all of them.
He's Josh Faraday, but they all just call him Faraday, and they say it like that. They're
Yes.
Faraday.
But yeah, like, so I thought that, Ethan Hawke and Byung-hun Lee, like, their characters are, like, seem like they have a really fun friendship, and it seems like they were, like, really good friends, and, like, and I was like, oh, I want to see more of this, but, like, you don't actually see that much of it, which I found disappointing. So, like, I kind of walked out, like, it's less wacky and funny than Suicide Squad, but I kind of walked out with the same feeling of, like, I kind of like some of these characters, but I would prefer to see almost like spin-offs devoted to them, as opposed to having watched this movie that kind of just like gives you a like kind of touches upon all of them, but doesn't actually let you get to know them that well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with your points. I in my review for CBR, I said they don't spend a lot of time on character development at all. It's really like they set up the archetypes and they're off and running. And I normally take issue with that. I think it's honestly just because I like Westerns so much that between knowing these kind of characters and then liking the actors that play them enough, I was just on board and I didn't really care. Like, you're totally right. There's not a lot of time spent to character development, and I totally would have loved more time with Robichaux and Rox because, like, I want like a cop show.
Because they're called Robichaux and Rox. I mean, come on.
It's so adorable. Good. Especially because, like, Ethan Hawke, who I go back and forth on as enjoying because, like, he plays the arrogant asshole so well that sometimes I just don't want anything to do with him on screen. But he does it so well here. And then to be contrasted by Byung-hun Lee, who doesn't have a lot of lines, but kind of like Silent Bob, uses his lines very effectively.
Okay. This is actually one thing. As an Asian person, I get so annoyed when I see Asian characters who are like, ooh, they're silent and mysterious. And I appreciated that he wasn't that. He's quiet, but no one's ever like, oh, he doesn't talk, he's silent. Like, I don't know. As an Asian person who talks a lot, I'm always just like, bullshit, we talk all the time.
Angie talks all the time. But yeah, no, but Billy Rox, it's like where one of them is like Robichaux is a loudmouth and Billy Rox is much more subdued. But like that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a lot going on. Like there's like a lot of close-up shots that you get. He knows what's going on with Robichaux before anybody else does. And like I really liked their bond.
They really care about each other. It was like
they really
Bebop
do.
And Rocksteady, but actually even less developed, which kind of says something because it's not like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows is like superb character development. Sure. Like that's the level of character development we're working with here. Sub Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sequel.
I don't agree with that. Because I thought that what I thought was so good is that because they established the chemistry and the relationship of those two so well, every shot you get of Robichaux is also kind of like getting a shot of Rox because they're so in tune with each other that like you know what's going on based on how the other one's reacting to something. So I quite like that. And I thought the character work in this was really fun. Like, there's not a lot of it, but like Vincent D'Onofrio in this, by the way, I remember seeing tweets about his voice in it, and I was like, why? What's he do with his voice? But then I didn't want to find out until I watched the movie. And like, as soon as he spoke on screen, I was like, what is this? And it kind of sounds like someone's choking a really old baby. Like, it's like strained and high pitched, but also old man. Wrong. And I was confused by it, but then the way they introduced him, you're like, no, I guess that makes sense. Like, his voice is probably pretty fucked from all the things that he's been through in his life. But it's like, it also allowed him to create such a distance from his last really well-known character, Wilson Fisk from Daredevil, that I thought it was a really smart move. But yeah, they all play together in this really fascinating way. And then on top of that, I just thought it was beautiful to look at. The cinematography is incredible.
Oh, I thought you meant Chris Pratt.
Oh, I also do like Chris Pratt.
I mean,
Chris Pratt is he's just playing Star-Lord again, but like Star-Lord in the West, and I'm not mad
at
it.
The Jurassic World character. Like, he always plays that kind of type after, like, since Parks and Rec, he just always plays that type. I also, to go back to the performances for a second, though, Peter Sarsgaard, he's so good at playing villains. He is so much fun in this.
Which is funny because I like him like a lot. Like, I'm always rooting for him as an actor, and then I see him in these movies, and I'm like, why are you always such a bad guy? And it's like, but he's so good in this, and he's like lost.
Have you seen Green Lantern? Because that is not a good movie, but he is fantastic in it because he's like, I'm gonna just devour all the scenery, and you're just
well, in this, he's lost a little bit of weight, and his face looks really gaunt. So it gives him this. He looks different than I tend to expect like Western villains to look, because I feel like in villains, Westerns always look really well fed or scarred up or something, and he doesn't. He looks a little different, but he still looks angry, and it's just he's so good at playing like the apathetic villain. Like, there's one sequence where he's just watching his guys get ripped to shreds. And they cut to him, and he's basically just like chewing on grass, being like, "All right, next thing." And like I love him. I think I described him as deliciously deplorable.
That's a good way of describing it. I found this movie kind of intermittently interesting. I kind of feel like it either needed to be quite a bit shorter or quite a bit longer because, it drags. The final act is like, I don't know, it's another movie where it's like 40 minutes long and it just goes on and on and on and on. So, so either they needed to kind of streamline it and tighten it up so it's like 90 minutes or something, or they needed to make it much longer so that we could have more, like, an actual second act where we get to know the characters. Because here's another way is like Suicide Squad. Everyone's all like, oh, you guys, I care so much about this team, blah, blah. I was like, you guys met, like 2 days ago. You barely know each other. Like, I'm so tired of that. I don't know. It's... Yeah, okay. Like, they met, they talked, they got along. They're not, but then, they act like
they
they're
ate
some
beans
sort of like,
together, Angie. It's a Western tradition. You eat beans together. You're brothers.
That's no. But they acted like they were this like big like ride or die crew, and I was like, you guys, most of you don't know each other and didn't know each other until 5 minutes ago. Only Ethan Hawke knows anyone. He knows Denzel Washington. He's friends with
Billy Rocks.
Billy Rocks.
Yeah. Well, like, they had, like, their stepbrothers moment where, like, a bunch of the characters would do something and then they'd be like, are we best friends? And it was like, yeah, now they're best friends.
I don't not like it. Like, to me,
that's how men work, Angie.
It feels like a good background show, except that to watch it at home, because you're right, it does look really good and it looks good on, like, a giant screen, so I would kind of feel bad about taking that away. But otherwise, I would say it's kind of a good plain movie. Like,
wow.
You only have to kind of pay attention. It's not as bad as, like, Victor Frankenstein. I'm saying that in the sense that it's, like, a pretty thin, easy movie, so you only kind of have to, like, be, like, 70% paying attention.
I mean, I guess that's true. I would actually say that this would be a good introduction to people who are, like, who don't really know a lot about Westerns, because it kind of has a lot of the tropes, but at a more modern speed. I don't disagree with you.
I think that
you thought it was slow?
No, not that. Like, I'm saying, like, it's not like there's any tropes in here that you haven't already absorbed from pop culture, even if you don't watch a lot of Westerns. So I don't think that it's really like, oh, you don't know about Westerns. This movie will teach you things. It'll be like, yes, I know about gunslingers being a thing and hats and horses, sure.
Wow, I'm so, like, mystified because you're not the only one that feels like kind of I keep seeing the word mediocre used in reference to this movie. And I'm astonished because I think that, like, the star power is so good. I think the dialogue is really fun. Like, there's lines in it like, if God didn't want them to be sheared, he wouldn't have made them sheep. Like, there's really great, like,
that's
cutting
a Peter
remarks.
Sarsgaard, right?
Yeah, so good.
He's
he, like,
so much
spits
fun.
it, and you're like, oh, you're so mean. And then I thought the performance was really good. I think it's beautiful to look at. So, like, I'm astonished that we're calling this mediocre. Like, out of TIFF, this got, like, pretty mixed to negative or middling reviews, I would say. And I don't understand. I thought it was really fun to watch. I went to see it opening night because I missed the press screenings because I was away. And I watching it with an audience, like, it was funny because I ended up sitting next to these two guys who I don't know just because theaters. And the three of us were, like, jumping and hooting and shouting and, like, having a really incredible time and, like, laughing really hard because there's some jokes in this that really got me. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I thought that was a really fun theater experience to have because walking into that I think if you'd walked into the lobby of the theater and you wouldn't have picked the three of us out in a crowd and be like, I bet they're going to go to the same movie and have a great time. But we did.
I felt like even the tone is a little bit uneven. It's not as bad as, again, to reference it again, Suicide Squad, but the tone, like, I was like, are you, like, a serious revenge drama? Are you trying to be wacky fun? Are you, like, supposed to be, like, cheesy, like, B-movie nonsense? Like, it was honestly, like, the tone kind of just kept going back and forth between all those things, so that to me was also maybe one of the things that stopped me from because I kind of felt like if it just embraced its cheesy side, I might have been able to enjoy it maybe closer to how apparently you enjoyed it, where I'm just like, this is ridiculous nonsense and I love it.
I wouldn't
but there
say,
was a little bit too
I
much,
had, like, strong reactions, but I didn't think it was, like, ridiculous or goofy. I just was very invested. I think it's because it reminded me a lot of watching Deadwood, and I love Deadwood. So I got this like whole rush when characters would say things. And there's also like one guy who was in Deadwood who like played like a minor character in both the movie and that show. But I was just like, oh, there's Tommy. And it's like I like being in this world because like in real talk, like I wouldn't do well in the Wild West, but I like to enjoy it in fiction.
All right. So, you want to wrap up? Final thoughts? 2 thumbs up, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, like, I don't know if it'll make my top 10 because there have been some things I really loved this year, but I genuinely and deeply enjoyed this movie, and I really recommend it. If you like Westerns, if you like Chris Pratt, if you like Denzel Washington or Antoine Fuqua, go see The Magnificent Seven in theaters.
I mean, if you like all those things, I would say walk, don't run. It's fine. Like, there are things that I like about this movie. If you're a fan of Chris Pratt and would like to see some, like, delicious camera shots just slowly panning up his body, then, you know, you should watch this. But beyond that, like, I mean, it was fine. Like, I don't have a problem with it. If this movie, I guess if you see the trailers and this movie really, and the movie appeals to you, then sure. But if you're kind of like, I don't know, then it's probably one you can sit out without, you know, being on your deathbed having regrets.
I mean, not saying it's a deathbed regret movie, but I thought it was pretty damn good. All right, I guess that's us for this week. You can find us on popcornprosecco.com. We're on Facebook and Twitter at Popcorn Prosecco. You should subscribe to us on iTunes, and if you rate and comment, that's really great because it helps us get up there in the rankings. Tell your friends, tell your family, share our podcast. Angie, do you want to give your plugs?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at AJHAN, and I write for slashfilm.com where you can find all my TIFF reviews like I mentioned above.
And Perry can be found at P. Nemiroff and on Collider and Movie Talk. And I am at Kristy Puchko on Twitter. That's KRISTYPUCHKO. I write all over the interweb, but you can find my career highlights at decadentcriminals.com and listen to me Friday nights on It's Eric Nagel on SiriusXM. That's everything for this week. We'll be back next week with a review of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. So check us out.
Ooh, God. Dang it, I'm good.